everyone, welcome to Water Bear Reads, where I chat about illustrated classics and modern classics. And today I just thought I would pop on here and do a mini book haul video. Some books that I picked up during my recent travels to New Mexico. My mom took me used book shopping and I grabbed a few books there that I wanted to show you, and I also wanted to just give you an update on what we're reading and what we plan to read between Christmas and New Year's over that nice, wonderful, quiet period. One of my favorite times of the year. While we were in New Mexico in early December, my mom took us to the St. James Tearoom, and it was such a lovely experience. It's a really great place to go have tea if you're a book lover, because almost all of their teas are themed after a book or a story. So for example, the holiday tea was Nutcracker-themed, and I think the next one that's coming out will be Sherlock Holmes. I think that starts December 31st. It's just a wonderful experience. You walk into this tea area and all the booths are curtained off from each other and everything's beautifully decorated, and each booth is named after a famous literary place. I'll explain a little bit more when I do my reel. I thought I would close this video out with a 3-minute reel of footage I've been editing from when we were there. I'm excited to share it with you all and just catch up. I've got my dark hot chocolate that I get from a local company called Bixby Chocolates. I showed them to you in a previous video. They're a local Maine-based company and female-owned as well. I love getting their hot chocolate mixes, so I'm going to take a sip of my hot chocolate and then we'll get started. Before we get started with the books that I picked up, I just wanted to tell you about a non-holiday book that we finished while we were in New Mexico, and it's The Land of Green Ginger by Noel Langley, illustrated by Edward Ardizzone. And I had this sitting on my shelf for ages and may never have picked it up if it wasn't for Deea over at Novel Idea. She mentioned it and she talked about how much she liked it, and so we decided to pick it up. And if you haven't checked out Deea's channel, you have to check it out. I'll link it below. It is the most relaxing channel. Her voice is just so wonderful, and I love her selection of books, and it just completely relaxes me. It's just wonderful. I love Deea. This was such a funny read. The names of the characters in this book, it just cracked my son up. It was a hoot. The character of Aladdin that we all know, it's centered around his son. His son's name is Abu Ali. The genie comes out of the lamp and lets everyone know that Abu Ali is prophesied to be the releaser of a magician who has accidentally turned himself into a turtle, or a tortoise actually, and has been stuck on a sort of floating garden of sorts called the Land of Green Ginger. And it's just really funny. It's adventurous. There's some interesting characters. There's a little bit of romance in it too. And we really enjoyed it. I was also extremely surprised and excited to find out that Noel Langley, who is a South African by the way, was one of the writers of the Wizard of Oz script, the Judy Garland version of the Wizard of Oz. It's illustrated by Edward Ardizzone, who you'd know from many works of modern classic children's literature. Stig of the Dump, The Little Book Room by Eleanor Farjeon, The Growing Summer by Noel Streatfeild, just to name a few. I think there's also, since we're in the holiday season, I think there's also a version of A Child's Christmas in Wales that's illustrated by him as well. His illustrations are wonderful. The only thing I wish with this book is that they were larger, but there's his version of the Genie of the Lamp. So anyway, I just had to tell you guys about this and say thank you to Deea for this lovely recommendation. We really enjoyed it, so thank you so much, Deea. I picked up a few books in Albuquerque. My mom took me used book shopping, and there's a few that I'm going to hold off and show you when I do my winter book haul video, but there were a couple that were Christmas related, so I thought I would show them to you in this video. And the first one was The Great Christmas Kidnapping Caper by Jean van Leeuwen, and it's pictures by Stephen Kellogg. I know Stephen Kellogg's work because one of our absolute favorite picture books is The Day Jimmy's Boa Ate the Wash. I love this book. I've loved this book from when I was a kid. It was a Reading Rainbow book as well. But so as soon as I saw this beautiful book with his illustrations, I grabbed it. Stephen Kellogg is an illustrator out of Connecticut, and his work is everywhere. I don't know much about it other than there's these mice, or a mouse, who live in Macy's, and they believe that the Macy's Santa Claus has been kidnapped. So I'll be interested to find out what it's about, but it looks very sweet. Let me show you one of the illustrations inside. I don't know if you can see that. Isn't that cute? Another book I picked up while used book shopping is this Christmas Carol illustrated by Maggie Downer. Even though the cover is a little outdated for today's tastes, the inside is just wonderful. Effervescent is the word that comes to mind. This is one of my favorite illustrations from A Christmas Carol, is the Ghost of Christmas Present. Here's another one that's just wonderful. And another one. And I also love how they have these little embellishments throughout the book, black and white embellishments. But yeah, so kind of an outdated cover, but a really nice version actually once you look inside. Illustrated by Maggie Downer, who I don't know anything about, but I'll be researching, trying to find out more about her. I did a cursory glance, and I did see that she had illustrated some of Enid Blyton's work. I found that quite interesting. I also was so excited to find How I Saved Hanukkah by Amy Goldman Koss. Pictures by Diane DeGrow. Diane DeGrow is a prolific illustrator as well. Her work is all over the place. But we know her from another one of our favorite picture books, Charlie the Ranch Dog, which is just one of the sweetest, cutest stories ever. We read this over so many times. We actually finished reading this one already. There's so few Hanukkah books out there, so when I find one, I get very curious about them. It's about a girl, Marla, who is a Jewish girl, and everyone around her is celebrating Christmas. But even though Marla's Jewish, they don't really do very much celebrating of Hanukkah. So this year, Marla decides that she's going to get her family to really celebrate Hanukkah this year and do the Hanukkah traditions, the latkes and lighting the candles and playing dreidel and dancing and the music. It has a great value because you get to experience a lot of what Marla was feeling like and how she felt so different from everybody else. Here's some of the illustrations by Diane DeGrow, and here's another one. It's a quick read, very sweet. We fly in and out of Boston, and I found myself with a couple of hours before we needed to be at the airport, so we stopped at Barnes & Noble's, and I found this very travel-friendly version of the Nutcracker, which is just so pretty. It has black and white woodcut illustrations by Georges Bertal, which is actually a pseudonym for Charles Albert Darnoux. My sister-in-law was checking it out on Wikipedia, and she came across the information that Bertal is an anagram of Albert. I thought that was pretty cool because he was known as Georges Bertal, or just Bertal. I'm not sure if all the illustrations are in here. I know that he did like over 220, and there's only 142 pages. And each one has one illustration, so I know that not all the illustrations are in here. Let me show you a couple of them. I've had such a busy December that even though I started this on the airplane on the way back, I haven't had a chance to read any further. This will be probably one that I read on Christmas Eve. And this was the Nutcracker, by the way. I've been wanting to read Dumas' version of the Nutcracker for a couple of years now, so this is the year I'm reading it. Another book I picked up while we were at Barnes & Noble's was the Christmasaurus, and we actually read this last year. We got a library loan. A lot of times with the middle grade books, before I actually purchase them, I'll rather get them at the library. And if it's one that we really like, then I'll add it to our home collection. But anyway, we really like this one. We follow a boy named William, and more than anything, he wants a dinosaur for Christmas. And he's also in a wheelchair. He had a car accident. There's also a girl who is really a bully. She is a mean girl, and she's bullying him. And as we're opening up, we flash to the North Pole, and we find out that there has been a frozen egg discovered in the North Pole. It has a really great value because it shows the effect of a bully, but it also explains how bullies sometimes also have things going on that causes them to become bullies. And so I kind of enjoyed that perspective and that kind of conversation that we found from this book. And it has lovely illustrations by Shane DeVries, whose work I'm not super familiar with. One thing I can say is when we picked up the book from the library, I felt like the illustrations were a little darker than they are in the paperback, but nonetheless, they're still wonderful. And anyway, if you haven't read The Christmasaurus, I highly recommend it. It's such a wonderful book. Speaking of library loans, we are currently reading The Incorrigible Children of Ashton Place, part of the Mysterious Howling series, and it's by Maryrose Wood. and illustrated by John Klassen. John Klassen, you would know his work if you are a fan of the I Want My Hat Back book. We're really enjoying it so far. We're getting quite close to the end there. And it's about Penelope. She's a governess and she goes to a mysterious country estate to look after 3 children. And these 3 children are very special because they have been raised outdoor, assumably by wolves, from some of the ways that they talk. Shortly after she begins work, she comes to find out that she has to prepare these 3 children for a Christmas ball. It's quite lovely. We're really enjoying it. Wonderful references. I'm excited to continue reading this, and I'll probably want to read more in the series after this because I'm really loving it. I also picked up and am reading The Flying Classroom by Erich Kastner. He is the author of Emil and the Detectives, as well as Lisa and Lottie, which you might know as The Parent Trap, and other really wonderful books as well that's out there. I think Dot and Anton is one of them. It's a wonderful book to read this time of year. There's snow everywhere, and the boys are putting on a Christmas play called The Flying Classroom. I actually started reading it with my son, and he didn't really take to it. I think he had a hard time differentiating between the characters. So I'm going to read it to myself, and it just might be something that he might enjoy when he's older. So I will continue reading it. But it's just the type of story that I think I'm going to love. I was reading the author's introduction, and he was saying how he was really struggling to write this book because he had to write it in August, and his mom actually searched around for where he could go to write this book, someplace that still had snow in August. And so he went to the Zugspitze, and he camped out there, and there was a cow with a bell around its neck that would come and fetch him every day at a certain time, and there was a cat. I actually really loved the introduction so much. This introduction really relaxed me when I was reading it. So yeah, I recommend this book just for the introduction. And it's illustrated by Walter Trier, who was a Czech German. Because he did some comic strips ridiculing Hitler and the Nazi Party, had to escape rather quickly. I think just as he received his British citizenship, they decided they were moving to Toronto, Canada, because that's where his daughter lived. He and his wife wanted to be closer to the daughter. Let me show you some of the pictures. Here's one that has me intrigued about what was going on there. Here's another one. You often see this image on some of the cover art of some of the versions out there. Here's a good wintry one as well with the polar bear. I also picked up The Christmas Pig at a local bookstore by J.K. Rowling. We have not read this one yet. We're going to start reading it as soon as we're finished with The Mysterious Howling. It's illustrated by Jim Field, whose work I'm not very familiar with. On the back, Jim Field's illustrations are described as being dazzling. I really do agree that it is dazzling. That looks to be set in Venice. I'm so excited to read this, to see what it's about. One of my friends and her son read this last year and really enjoyed it. In my previous video, I showed you Christmas Comes to Moomin Valley, and I told you guys how we were going to read the book where the fir tree, the book that this story is based upon, is found, the original, the fir tree. Tove Jansson's Tales from Moomin Valley, and I see these little hardbacks all over Instagram, and I just love them. I think they're so sweet. Very cute in papers. And this one has the fir tree as its final tale, and we've already read it, and I must say it actually is not a tale that really requires an adaptation because it is so easy to read, but nonetheless, I'm really glad to have this one because of the color illustrations, and they're just so pretty. It also has The Last Dragon in the World, which is one of our favorite Moomin stories. In fact, I think that they do have an adaptation of that story this year. By the way, I also wanted to show you, we also have stories from Moomin Valley. I have a hard copy of this one. Also one of the books that I treasure. We just read this year-round. I want to collect all the books this size. We've actually read 2 of them before this one. We read Comet in Moominland and Finn Family Moomin Troll, but we just used library copies. And I've been wanting to add them to our library ever since then. I think that's going to be one of my big goals in 2025 is to read more of the Moomin books. Illustrations are of course done by Tove Jansson. I'll show you her illustration for the fir tree. So that is it for my illustrated books. I did grab a couple of unillustrated books. One of them I'm going to read between Christmas and New Year's because that's when it's set. And it is Death of a Gingerbread Man by Lee Hollis. And it's a Haley Powell food and cocktails mystery. And I saw this at my local bookstore. They had it set up with books that are set in Maine. And it is set in Bar Harbor, which is a town that's nestled quite close to Acadia National Park. I love it there. We always stop at a place called Chocolate, which is a wonderful coffee, hot chocolate serving art gallery of sorts. And it's just wonderful. We always sit and have our hot chocolate after we've been out at Acadia. Of course, we go to Acadia mostly in the off season because it gets so busy during the summer. We tend to go to Acadia in the winter and in early spring and the autumn. I'm excited to read this. It involves a murder. I think somebody dressed up as Santa Claus gets murdered. I don't know, but yeah, excited to read one of these. Just something light and fun. The other non-illustrated book I want to show you is The Magic Flutes by Eva Ibbotson. I read Eva Ibbotsson's The Dragonfly Pool this year, and I just loved it so much. And I have The Star of Kazan on my wish list for Christmas, so I'm hoping I get it. But I decided to go ahead and get this one because it just seems very wintry just from the cover. It follows Tessa, and Tessa works backstage at a Viennese opera house. She's a princess in disguise, and she has plans, but they all go astray when she meets a very handsome Englishman. We've read many of Eva Ibbotson's works. We just finished The Secret of Platform 13, which we loved. Journey to the River Sea is my son's absolute favorite book. He loves that book. I have not yet been disappointed by Eva Ibbotson, so I'm really looking forward to reading this one. The cover art, by the way, I've spoken about her before. It's by Daniela Jaglenka Terrazini. You'll know her if you have this series, the Virago series, Anna Green Gables. She does the cover art for them as well. But yeah, so really looking forward to reading The Magic Flutes. Well, that is it for the books. Now I'm going to take you with me to Albuquerque, New Mexico, to the St. James Tea Room. So let me get the tone set for the video and see you there. Computer, play Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy by Tchaikovsky. If you ever find yourself in Albuquerque, New Mexico and fancy a lovely afternoon tea with all the frills, you may want to visit the St. James Tea Room. After entering the tea room and checking in, we were dazzled by 2 rooms filled with tea-related gifts and other wonders. The tea areas are curtained off from each other, and we felt so lucky to be seated in an area named the Bird and Baby, which was the nickname for a pub in Oxford where C.S. Lewis and Tolkien used to meet.
And the toy soldiers, Duchess potatoes, are ready to defend you. While the Mouse King's cheddar quiche is a cheesy pastry with leeks, red peppers, and even more cheese in the custard.
Okay.
And then finally, with an orange on top, Sweet Clara's traditional tea.
And for dessert, gingerbread cake with lemon glaze, and dancing sugar plum cookie, and tree-pack truffle.
Once our tea was completed, we took time to peruse the gift shop filled with tea service items, Christmas ornaments, and other many and varied delights. I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was such a lovely experience, so I'm so happy to be able to share it with you guys. That is it for me for this year, so I'll see you next year in 2025, and until then, I hope that you have a wonderful Christmas season or Hanukkah. And also thank you so much for being here on my channel and hanging out with me this year, and it's just been such a pleasure having you guys with me while I do these videos, and I just want to say thank you so much. And also thank you to any new subscribers and welcome as well, and I'll see you in the new year, I hope, and I look forward to getting to know you all. Have a lovely holiday, and I'll see you soon in the new year. Bye!